Hey, y'all.
Hello. Welcome back, guys, to Night Shift with Andrea Up Late. I am joined tonight, as always, by my trusty co-host, Brian Sanders. How you doing, Brian?
I'm good. I just said it. It didn't do it. It doesn't do it. And
what, your audio?
Yeah, but I clicked.
You're so fast.
I know. I swear last week.
Those go-ahead fingers. If you are new here, Brian Sanders is a retired homicide lieutenant, and this is a true crime podcast. So obviously that helps a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He also hangs wallpaper on the side. Welcome back, everybody. We're trying to get back into the groove, get back into New Year. We've got 2 in a row so far this year, and I feel like we're already banging it out better than we ended last year. So either way, again, if you're new here, this is a live YouTube show every week, every Tuesday night, sometime between 8:30 and midnight, and then we drop to streaming podcasts wherever you listen to your audio podcast. So your Spotify, iTunes, etc. Usually on the next day, on a Wednesday, that'll drop. So welcome back. Do you have anything crazy you want to chat about?
No, I have not put an episode out on the Disruptors for a long time.
Yeah.
But that's only because we've been busy doing other stuff.
We've been doing a whole lot of things.
We've been doing a whole lot.
Yeah.
And finishing up the novel.
What you been up to? I was going to say, are you ready to tell everybody what you've been doing?
Yes. So finishing up edits on my first novel, should be published in a few months if I can finish everything on my end. And that's what my day hours have been.
Yeah, guys. So I don't think we've really talked much about it, but it's been years and years in the making. And I think his dream of being a novelist is finally about to come to fruition. I'm about to have to tell him just to let it be as it is. No more reworks, no more changing around.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
It's solid. So I think that we should just get started.
Let's do it.
All right. Without further ado, oftentimes, and tonight is no exception, Brian is not really privy to the case we're covering. So he just kind of listens along, asks questions, and then, of course, we all ask his input where it applies because he has knowledge of all things bad.
Sadly.
Or something like that. You guys, we're going to talk about a case that while it has a lot of coverage, in one respect, it's kind of all the same coverage. And you got to be real careful with that, especially with a decades-old case like this one, because before you know it, the same story has been kind of copy and pasted a lot. And it can be initially reported inaccurately, and then you got to be careful. So no harm, no foul for those that kind of repeat that, because it's very easy to do, especially, like I said, in a case this old. But I certainly found some inconsistencies in researching for this one, and hopefully we can kind of get through those and bring you the most accurate information here. This is unsolved. Night Shift tends to cover primarily unsolved or unresolved cases. So I can't wait to hear your input as the night goes on and toward the end of the show, and see kind of where you're leaning on your speculation on really what happened this night back in 1974. Okay. So this case is called the Fort Worth Trio. So back in 1974, things were obviously much, much different. Time moved slower, innocence loomed a little larger, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
In Fort Worth, Texas that year, the population was around 395,000. So it was not a small town by any means, but considerably smaller than it is these days. Known colloquially as Cowtown, Fort Worth boasts the beef and cattle industry as a major money maker. And in 1974, the stockyards boasted cowboy culture. The wealthiest family known in and around the area would be those associated with the Walton family. Could you guess? Do you know which Walton family we might be speaking of?
Oh, Sam's Club.
Sam Walton. This would be heirs and heiresses to the Walmart Corporation. And of course, any overflow from the oil tycoons. So you do have some wealth out there. But Fort Worth to this day was stained and has been notably remembered by a tragic event that took place just before Christmas, just over 50 years ago. This would be the unsolved disappearance of 3 young girls. So we've had a case, not the same in circumstances, but if you remember, we've covered multiple times the Springfield 3 out of Springfield, Missouri. And I think that this comes into play because whenever you have more than one person disappear, or, something that's unsolved without any shred of remains, evidence, or anything like that, and it's more than one person, and in this case, more than two people, that kind of changes how you look at not the investigation, but what the likelihood is of certain, certain outcomes, right? So on a brisk Monday morning, December 23rd, 1974, 17-year-old Rachel Trlica was excited to do some Christmas shopping. She asked her 19-year-old sister, Deborah, to go with her, but Deborah had not been feeling well and declined. A lot of reports say that she was sick. Evidently, Deborah had played canasta until about 4 a.m. the night prior and was not up to going out shopping this day, okay? So she reached out to her girlfriend, 14-year-old Renee Wilson. Now, Rachel and Renee, despite their age difference, they went to the same high school and they were really good buddies, and their families knew each other. And so they hung out outside of school. So Rachel asked Renee to go, and Renee takes her up on it. Renee then reaches out to her boyfriend, 15-year-old Terry Moseley. Renee often stayed with her grandmother when her mother was at work, and Terry lived just across the street. Okay, so that had become her boyfriend recently, but Terry already had plans to stay with a friend of his who was having surgery that day and keep him company. Now, you may wonder why I'm telling you who all they invited to go on this trip. But when it comes to some speculation as to what happened to them, it's important to come back to the start of the case and remember that they had been inviting other people to come along with them. So that may change your idea of what potentially could have happened at the end. Okay, so regardless, Renee was very excited to come back that afternoon and spend time with Terry. After all, he had just given her a promise ring that very morning. So Terry had gone over to Renee's grandmother's house that morning and given her this promise ring. And so she was over the moon to come back home from shopping and spend her evening with Terry. So Terry's little sister, however, 9-year-old Julie Moseley, overheard the conversation about this Christmas shopping trip. She immediately asked the older girls, Rachel and Renee, if she could go with them. But they told her she would have to ask her mother's permission first. And little Julie called her mom at work to ask. So mom initially says no. Okay. The rest of the family agrees that mom generally never granted permission for things like this, especially with little Julie. Again, she was only 9. She did have an 11-year-old sister and then her older brother, Terry. And so she did tell Julie no. But Julie didn't have money with her. That's kind of mom's reasoning. Mom didn't know Rachel, the oldest girl that was going, the one that would be driving the car. She did know Renee because remember, that was her son's girlfriend. But she didn't know, Rachel and Julie didn't have money. But Julie begged and didn't want to spend the day pretty much at home alone. And so her mom finally consented and told Julie that she could tag alongside the teen girls and go to the mall. And Julie was over the moon. Her mother has said that she has never regretted anything more. So let's recap. We have 17-year-old Rachel Trlica, okay, 14-year-old Renee Wilson, and 9-year-old Julie Moseley. And they're going to be on their way to have a day of Christmas shopping. This is 2 days before Christmas in 1974. So we have a few timestamps here that kind of mold this story, but not really too many. Not like, some days I tell you to bring out your whiteboard and start taking notes. This case isn't really that way, which is actually part of the frustrating part of it because there's so little to go off of when it comes to like leading up to their disappearance. But we know that Renee was adamant about being home by 4 p.m. So she and Terry had a Christmas party to go to that night at 6 o'clock. So she wanted to be home in time, plenty of time to get ready. So she had told everyone that she was going to be home by 4 o'clock that afternoon. Also, little Julie, remember her mom begrudgingly even let her go, had a curfew of 6 p.m. that evening. So we have a couple of curfews that would be met. And these girls were known to me. I mean, this wasn't a problem with them. So the girls all piled into Rachel's gold 1972 Oldsmobile 98. Where's Bosco? He can tell us about this car. And took off. This was right around noon. So the first stop they made was to an Army Navy surplus store. So Rachel had 2 pairs of jeans on layaway and wanted to pick them up. We've talked about layaway on this show a little bit. So those of you who may not remember, that was a system for essentially not credit, but you go and you essentially make the promise to purchase something at a store. That item lives at the store until you've paid it off, but you can go and just pay installments on it a little bit at a time as you get your paycheck or weekly or whatever works for you. And I remember even until, I would say even in the 90s, like Walmart had still a huge layaway counter in the back. Usually I think it was in the back of the store, right? Kmart, Walmart.
Yeah, Kmart was in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Walmart was too, if I remember correctly. And And so around Christmas time, you'd see so many people in line come in to finally get the items to take home after they'd been on layaway for months. So they were stopping at the Army Navy surplus store to get these jeans for Rachel that she had put on layaway. Okay. So the next stop was the Seminary South shopping center in Fort Worth. So this was a mall. Just, it says shopping center, but it was a big shopping mall. It's still there. It's got a different name these days, but sadly, it seems this is where this case comes to really a screeching halt. The day went on and 4 o'clock came and went. Remember, that was Renee's time to get home so she could get ready for the Christmas party to go with Terry. The girls' families, little by little, start becoming more and more concerned. Finally, some of Renee's family heads out to find the girls. Remember, again, and we almost have to remind some of you, especially if you're not our age or older, that I know you know this, but it's almost hard to put yourself back in that place. There were no cell phones. So communication was so much less than it is now. So your word was super important. Your past behavior was super important. All of these things to kind of indicate what was going to go on. And so with no cell phones, the first thing the family thinks of is, they're running a little behind. And then they think, well, what if her car ran off in a ditch, right? That's going to be probably the first thing you think of. So some of Renee's family heads out to find them. So they kept their eyes peeled as they made their way, which would be the typical route to Seminary South Shopping Center, the way they assumed the girls would be traveling. But there was no sign of the girls or the Oldsmobile as they got closer and closer. And once they got to the mall, they drove all around the parking area. They were searching, and it seems they finally found what they were looking for. There in the upper level of the Sears parking lot was Rachel's car. Relieved, Renee's family gets out. They look around. They look in it. There's nothing ajar, nothing that looks doom, like no blood, nothing bad. It was locked. The keys were not there with it. So it just looks pretty normal. And maybe they've just overstayed their time at the mall, right? So they make their way inside the mall, and there they go to any store they thought the girls may have visited and ask them to use the paging system, if each store had it, to call their names. Nothing was turning up. Now, in later years, Rusty, who is Rachel's little brother, he was 11 at the time. He's the one who went with his mother on this initial search to find the girls, then found the car, then went in the mall. And he says that at 11, he didn't remember a whole lot other than, and he didn't have any reason to think anything horrible happened. He had a much older sister that was 2 years older than Rachel, who was a little bit of a wild one. So she'd kind of go off for days or weeks at a time and come back. So he was kind of used to this. So he wasn't super alarmed at the time, but he does remember kind of being dragged along by his mom through all these stores in the mall from around close to 6 o'clock until the mall closed at 11, trying to find his sister and the other girls. So like I said, they would use the paging system, anything they had. They're talking to people, asking if they see these 3 girls. So nothing's turning up, but there were some early witnesses to say they had in fact seen the girls in the mall. So Renee was wearing a t-shirt that day. Accounts vary, but I think most of them say that it was pale yellow. They'll say either white or pale yellow in color with green lettering. And the green lettering said "Sweet Honesty" across the front. So a few witnesses specified this detail. Okay. She was also wearing like red and white shoes and purplish blue hip huggers, but that shirt is kind of what stood out. So when people said that, you can clarify a little more easily that they did see the girls. No one indicated any distress noted amongst the 3, but there were differing stories, and one did include a man walking with them. Trust me, we will go over all the witness accounts and see where they either do or don't corroborate each other. So the family got back out to the car, and by now more family members are beginning to show. So around 6 p.m., think about it, little 9-year-old Julie is with them, and her mom, who would normally not even want her to be there, is really kind of starting to panic because it's the first time she's kind of let her out to do something like this. So around 6 p.m., law enforcement was notified that the girls were missing. I've read some side reports where people will say, I think it's crazy that they waited till 6. It's not crazy at all. I mean, if they weren't supposed to be home until 4, you're going to give it a few minutes then, and then they drive to the mall, then they look for them. I mean, 6 o'clock comes around before you know it, okay? So in the trunk of the car were 2 pairs of jeans, confirming that Rachel had in fact stopped by the Army Navy store prior to arriving to the mall, okay? So there's also a small wrapped gift, and this would be in the floorboard of the back seat. So at first, this had families and law enforcement believing the girls had concluded their shopping trip, had something gift wrapped in the mall, and made it back to the car to at least secure their belongings before whatever happened, before taking off. Okay. And that's important because for a while, this is what law enforcement thought. So, you have to take a few steps back when we're thinking objectively about it here. It's not our family. We're not in the middle of this crisis, and think about it. Do we even know they went inside the mall? Do we even know they left the mall? Could they have gone out a back door of the mall, been taken to their basement areas under the mall? There are things to think of. So it's important if you're now tracking them back to the car to spend that time there and lock the doors. Okay. So, we learned that 6 months prior to this event, Rachel Trlica, the oldest, the one that was driving the car, who was 17, had married 22-year-old Tommy. Okay, so Trlica is actually her married name. So they'd been married for 6 months. Yes, she was young. She lived with him. She was still in high school. So Tommy was divorced with a 2-year-old son, Sean. And it's eventually determined that wrapped gift that's in the back seat was actually given to Rachel from her grandmother to give to baby Sean.
Okay.
So now we don't know if they ever came, we can kind of assume that they went into the mall because we were hearing people say that, giving a good description of the girls thinking they saw them inside the mall. So we can go off of that for now. We don't know whether or not they came back to the car or not. So while sources vary, some reported early on that the gift wrap presents and receipts, they said it just like generically speaking, gift wrap presents and receipts were in the car. So they must have certainly gotten back to the vehicle without complication. But again, this cannot be corroborated. There were in fact no receipts found from that day and no gifts other than the one that was already in the car. So if you do want to look into this case, just know that, because you'll read some sources that say that gift receipts were in there and things like that. That's not actually the case. So as we've discussed time and time again, particularly in these decades-old cases, Brian, can you guess? And he doesn't know anything about this case. Yeah. You guys know as much as he does. What do you think police thought when they arrived to the car and realized that these 3 young girls were not there?
That they rode off with some friends to go do something else.
Yep. Or just ran away
the first thing I thought is, well, with that, they could have just gone to go do something else with somebody. You know what I mean? Like, there's no signs of struggle yet. You don't think you've got a crime. You just have girls not home yet.
Right.
She found the vehicle, and it doesn't appear to be anything that right off the bat says, oh my gosh, this is
something terrible has happened. For sure. Now, I think that cops got to the idea of runaway early on because the families were kind of in such distress, because they were like, this isn't right. Like, Renee and Terry are going to a Christmas party. This one had plans here. Julie had to be home by 9. Like, none of this makes sense. And so they were like, they just probably ran away.
And this is my little disclaimer. Don't jump to for current day.
Yeah.
Investigators, don't jump to runaway unless there is some history of that or some type of conflict that the teenager or the adult or whatever is trying to run away from. And I've heard detectives say, they probably just ran away. Why do you think that? Yeah, you were late for work. I didn't think you just ran away. I mean,
yeah. Particularly, and I do think that we can all agree, this was the early to mid 70s. That was a much more prevalent conclusion at that time. I think that law enforcement does do a better job of that these days. But particularly in this case, when we're looking at 3 girls from fully different families. These weren't sisters. It wasn't one kid. It was 3 different ones. So now you're assuming that all 3 just chose to run away, including a 9-year-old who was excited for Christmas in 2 days. Yeah. So they immediately assumed the girls had run away and said they had no reason to suspect foul play. And that was pretty much it. Okay. But all of the girls' families vehemently denied this to be the case. They had never run away before. There was nothing to indicate that this was something they planned to do. And I mean, there are multiple reasons why that wouldn't make sense here. One of which is, why in the world would they leave the car?
Yeah.
If they're running away. But we're going to get to all of that soon enough, guys. The police didn't actually search the mall itself until 11 o'clock once it had closed down.
Okay.
So they didn't go inside. We've heard this before, like the idea of like not wanting to disturb anything or bother anything. And to be fair, they kind of didn't want to be bothered with it. And I hate to say that, but there are some future readings about all of this that you kind of see that was the conclusion, because really they were kind of, the conclusion they had was that the girls had run off. So they really didn't find an urgency there. Okay. So Renee's dad, Richard Wilson, and a neighbor of theirs were armed with shotguns and stayed by the car all night. So this was in an effort to protect the car and obviously be there, in fact, if the girls return and any defense was needed. But sadly, there was no sign of the girls, and no one else came anywhere near the car for the entire night. So after looking back through the car, Tommy, remember that's Rachel's husband of 6 months, okay? Tommy tells police that 4 items are missing from the glove box. This would be 3 $50 bonds that he and his first wife had purchased, and a copy of a will from his parents who had passed away. Okay, so I guess they were keeping them in the glove box for safekeeping. And the next morning, Christmas Eve, 1974, the morning edition of the local paper, the Star Telegram, covered the story. This is important because this will be what we know. We always want to know what the public knows about the case, so that when you start having tips and witness accounts coming in, well, what did they already know? And so on this early account, in my purse, sorry, you guys. So sorry. Sometimes you still got stuff to deal with. Just purse, bedroom. So on the next morning, Christmas Eve, 1974, the morning edition of the Star Telegram covered the story. They said the police had no reason to suspect foul play. So we know now the public thinks that the police are not looking at foul play. The paper did include the fact that the families disagreed adamantly with law enforcement's opinion of the circumstances. So this is in effect the entirety of what the public knew. They knew police say no foul play suspected, but the families kind of pushing back on that. Okay. Then something very interesting happened. Were you about to say something?
No, for once I was. I was just adjusting them.
Okay. So something very interesting happens then. That Christmas Eve morning, the morning just after the girls have gone missing, okay? Rachel's husband, Tommy Trlica, opens his mailbox to a most intriguing piece of mail. So there at 3712 Minot was a letter. He later recalls he had no memories of Christmas cards in the mailbox that day, bills, flyers, etc., just a singular letter. It was addressed to him, in fact, quite formally. The envelope was written in pencil, okay? And I'm going to show you a picture of this, you guys, because we've covered a few cases like this where there's a mysterious disappearance and even almost a more mysterious letter or journal entry or piece of paper that arrives, okay? So it's addressed, again, the envelope was written in pencil. Keep that in your brain. And it was addressed to Thomas A. Trlica. In the upper left-hand corner of the envelope was scrawled simply Rachel. No return address, no last name, just Rachel, as to give the impression that his wife, Rachel, one of the missing 3, had written the letter. I'm going to go on and show you. I have a copy of the letter here. Evidently, the picture of the envelope didn't open up or didn't load. I will put that on Andrea Upload Instagram page when I also put up last week's show that I have yet to do. But I will do that in just a day or two. So any of you who are listening through audio streaming will be able to see this. But this is the letter. I know that it's blurry, but that is the actual original letter. Pretty much what circulates now are all, a copy times 1,000. So I did enjoy finally finding the actual original letter. Keep in mind, though, the envelope's written in pencil. This letter, however, is written in pen. So Tommy quickly opens the letter, pulls out a piece of paper nearly double the width of the envelope. The letter, like I said, was written in pen, right? So that's different already. And it states, I know I'm going to catch it, but we just had to get away. We're going to Houston. See you in about a week. The car is in Sears upper lot. Love, Rachel. Okay. So neither Tommy, I want to show you the girls real quick as we're talking. So if you're looking at your screen and these are actually labeled, so that's great. That's Rachel Trlica. That's who supposedly wrote this letter, or you're supposed to think that, okay? That was her car in the lot. She's the one married to Tommy. She's 17. In the middle there is 14-year-old Renee Wilson. And over to the right is little 9-year-old Julie Moseley. Okay. So we are supposed to think that Rachel wrote this. And so neither Tommy nor the rest of Rachel's family thought that it looked like Rachel's handwriting. There's been some analysis stating that the letter was written by a right-handed person and Rachel was actually left-handed. So let's discuss the appearance of this letter. I'm going to go on and put it back up here. Don't mind the fact that it's a little blurry. The penmanship, as you can see, was in cursive, but it's a bit cramped. It's almost hurried looking. Okay, it's kind of slanting in different directions a little bit. Some people have trouble with the fact that the letter was so formally addressed to Thomas A. Trlica when Rachel and the rest of their acquaintances called him Tommy. I don't have as much problem with that. Like, the more I thought about it, because I think we've forgotten that we've become increasingly more informal, like as a society, as time has gone on. And students used to be taught, I remember being taught letter writing. And addressing an envelope was part of that curriculum. And so you were always taught to use full name. So if you believe that Rachel wrote this letter, it wouldn't necessarily be crazy that her first thought would be to address it formally with his full name, not by what he goes by. It would only become strange then if when you open the letter, the salutation within it said Thomas, because that's where you write effectively, you usually write the way you address the person. So then in the letter, it should say Tommy, comma, right? However, what I do think is odd is the disparity between the formal addressing of Thomas A. Trlica on the envelope and the very informal writing of simply Rachel on the return portion. So it just says, and I know I don't have that picture here for you guys, but on the envelope picture, Thomas A. Trlica, but upper left-hand corner, just Rachel. You'd almost think that her last name would definitely be there, if not an address. Okay. So something else that sticks out about the letter, you may not be able to quite see it here. I can see it a little bit. I know what I'm looking for. And let me try to help explain to you where it closes to say love Rachel. The L in Rachel looks to have been corrected. So if you're able to look at it closely, and I'll make sure I snag a clearer picture to put on Instagram so you can kind of zoom in a little and see it better. It looks as though a small cursive E had first been written. So if you are familiar, you remember cursive, an E and an L in lowercase look exactly the same, just one's tall and one's short. Okay. So it looks like a larger loop has been written over a small cursive E to correct it to a cursive lowercase l. And if you look at that L, you can see, at least if you can't see very definitively, that there's a bolder mark down there in Rachel on the L than the rest of the letters. And that shows you where there had been an E there first. So that's important. That's important to remember as we go by. Of course, one can misspell words and eventually, you can mess up your own name, I'm sure, especially if you're in a hurry or whatever. But I don't know. In my opinion, cursive is kind of muscle memory. Like your signature particularly is muscle memory. And if Rachel had actually written this and it's her own name, it really feels like she wouldn't have written Rachee and messed that up. And if she was in that big of a hurry, would she have then corrected it to an L? Right. Like if she's in such a hurry that she, you know what I'm saying, that it's sloppy, let's say. So the canceled stamp or the postmark was dated 12/24. Okay, so remember, guys, it was 12/23 when they went missing, the afternoon of the 23rd of December. So this letter arrives in Tommy's mailbox the next day, and it's dated that next day's date on 12/24. Okay, so that means that the letter would have been mailed. I mean, it was processed via the post office, so it would have been mailed the evening before, or even as late as the morning of, because it has to get that December 24th mark on it. So that's a bit harder to understand. I've read some accounts from postal workers in the 70s that were kind of asked about this, and they said it's possible. But at the same time, other people will say at that time, if anything, mail moved a little slower. So it seems less possible. So then we obviously will discuss later, there's some trains of thought that think that this letter was already pre-written and sent at an earlier time. But if that's the case, you couldn't judge up that it would be post-dated on 12/24. Like you wouldn't have known that was the case if you did it earlier on. Okay. So that's just something you definitely want to think about. Another thing about the envelope is the postmark on the envelope contains an error. So the first 4 postal service numbers, when you look at the zip code, it says 7608. But the final number is a bit indecipherable. A lot of people have described it as what looks like a backward 3. So it would look like 76083, but the 3 is backward. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Unless they are able to look and see that this certain worker on this conveyor belt or this line has, a stamp has an error. So it can perhaps be looked at as a faded 8. So if the final number, the reason this matters, okay, and everything does matter, right? So the reason this matters is because if the final number were an 8, that would make the zip code 76088. So then that means that the letter would have come from Weatherford, which is about 40 minutes west of Fort Worth. If the final number being an inverted 3, even though unlikely, but if it's 76083 today, that's not a current zip code. But in 1974, that would be the zip code for Throckmorton, Texas, 76083 before it was changed years later. On a side note, Tommy, as the last I saw, within a couple of years, I should say, he's moved around a little bit. He's still in Texas. Within a couple of years of the disappearance, he did actually move to Throckmorton. But either way, so it matters that zip code's a little funky on that stamp because we don't necessarily know exactly where it came from. So that's just a little bit more of the mystery here. So back to the running away thought process. Okay, guys. Let's see here. If Rachel's idea was to go shopping that day, and it was indeed she who wrote that letter, and she also planned to run away, okay? Like we spoke about earlier, why would she have invited her older sister, who declined to start with? She didn't know that she would say no. And this is why I said earlier, keep in mind all the people they're inviting on this shopping trip, because if she... there are people who, and like with law enforcement and other people who thought for years and years that they ran away. Why would that have happened? Why would she have allowed Renee to come, like her friend? Why wouldn't she have just run away on her own? Okay, so then if Renee, let's say Renee's part of it and she wants to run away as well, okay, then why would Renee have invited her boyfriend Terry to come, who couldn't go that day? And even if all of that was the case, why would they have let 9-year-old Julie come along for the ride? Who wants the 9-year-old? Who wants to babysit when you've got this big runaway scheme? Okay. Why would they have picked up jeans at the surplus store and not taken them with them if she was running away? Why even make the stop unless she wanted to take them with her? And why the bizarre note mailed? Why leave the car? There are many more questions than not when it comes to the runaway theory. I'm so often not on board with the runaway theory. If it happens, it happens, and it has happened. But with a lot of these, that just doesn't seem to be the case. So we spoke earlier of potential witnesses, right? So remember, the police did not canvass the mall at all that day. They didn't go inside to look around until after closing at 11 p.m. So there are varying accounts of seeing the girls. Remember, 2 or 3 people mentioned seeing the 3 girls inside the mall that day, referencing Renee's Sweet Honesty shirt. So right around the time of the girls going missing, a clerk in the mall stated that an elderly woman told her that she had seen the girls that day at the mall. She described them pretty well. She said that she saw 2 of them seated in the back of a pickup truck with a man, while another man was forcing a 3rd girl into the truck. The truck is described as a yellow truck with lights on top, and that it was near the Buddy's grocery store that was kind of a part of and kind of beside the mall. The Star-Telegram newspaper appealed to this witness to come forward, promising her anonymity, but this never happened. And so there are just a lot of questions surrounding this account because it doesn't actually sound unlikely. It certainly could be something that could come, to fruition. But the question then remains, why didn't this person, they said, like I said, they just described her as an elderly woman. Why didn't she speak with police? Why didn't she come forward if she said that she saw it? And people have a multitude of reasons for not coming forward, but there, even at that time, were anonymous tip lines and things like that. So, who we don't know. Like that's one of the things we don't know. So in early 1975, someone came forward stating he saw the 3 girls in a record store at the mall that day. He said he spoke with Rachel briefly as they were acquaintances. So you can, if he's being honest, you can almost believe what he's saying in the sense of he knew Rachel. So he's not, he knows if that's her or not, right? And he said that a 4th person were with the girls, and he described that person as a tall man with dark hair. All right, so that's another potential theory. In January of 75, the families reached out to a psychic when they became frustrated at law enforcement's seeming lack of investigation. I'm not going to get into what the psychic said. It's thus far not come to fruition, but just know that even early on, family was getting frustrated because I think they felt that they weren't being heard because law enforcement thought it was a runaway situation. So on February 28th of 1975, so this would just be a couple of months later, a 14-year-old girl was arrested for prank phone calls in which she phoned the Wilson household and the Moseley household. She stated she was Renee. And that just kind of lends toward the complication with some of these big cases back then. We have a lot of these cases where family members, sadly, will continue to receive prank phone calls for years with missing children. And so I think especially when law enforcement seemed almost apathetic toward the case already, this only complicated matters and made leads so much more difficult to follow up on. Then there was a report of a man in a gold car pulling into a service station in Euless, Texas. That would be Euless. I had to look it up. Sorry, guys, I didn't know that city. It's a suburb of Fort Worth. It said that there were 3 girls in the back of this car, that he went in to purchase a beer, but was told they were closed. And as he pulled out, a girl in the back of the car dropped a flyer out of the open back window. And this was a flyer for the missing girls. No follow-up. Again, guys, there's no cameras. Nobody's got cameras. No big brother. Nobody's keeping an eye on anybody. But that's it. And so we don't even have follow-up from the person who said that, right? I'm not even sure if we have a name of the given statement of the person who says that they witnessed that. Finally, in March of 1975, the families hire a private investigator, John Swain. So John holds a press conference noting his irritability that the police weren't sharing any case files with him. Now, I guess, I kind of go back and forth on this one. Of course they shouldn't, right? This is a very open case. There's no way they should hand these files over. But on the flip side of that, not really a whole lot of investigative work was being done at the time because they were looking at it as a runaway case, okay? Now, I have read some reports that say that, kind of love him or hate him, John Swain was a bit aggressive, but it sounds like he did get more eyes on this case and did kind of put the fire under law enforcement's, tail to kind of get going here, and that it was said that he had, quote, like dirt on everyone in town. So I think that caused a lot of people not to like him too much. And look, far be it from me. We've talked to and encountered between personally or on the shows, PIs who are amazing. And then the ones that make you want to, lose your mind.
They're not Magnum.
They are not Magnum PIs. So either way, so John Swain is who they hire, and he's actually doing a good job here. So he has that press conference, and it kind of just opens the case back up to the public a little bit. Okay, so he stated that there had been a recorded call to dispatch on the night that the girls disappeared. He says the call included a license plate number and description of a vehicle. The police chief said those calls were erased every 60 days, and he had no knowledge of the call that John Swain was referencing. However, after this press conference, Swain was actually given the case files to study. So he made some movement there. Now, back real quick to the deleted calls every 60 days. That makes sense, guys. Things weren't digital. Yeah. So if it was just recorded, they needed more tape. So 2 months later, we're going to go on and, get rid of that. There isn't much more information on what he was referencing, though, when he's talking about a call being made with a description of a plate in a car. Was that like an abduction call, someone in distress? We don't really know what the call was about. So a plan was made to search the area between 2 bridges on April 9th, 1975, as a tip came in that the girls had been killed and dumped under one of the bridges near Port Lavaca. So this was approximately 330 miles south of Fort Worth. But this area had actually been searched already So we do learn that police had kind of followed up on at least this lead because they had received the same tip months or earlier on. Okay. But by springtime in April, once John Swaim gets a hold of this tip, the water levels were much lower. So they thought it would be worth a try to search again, but nothing really came of it. Later, bones had been found on the outskirts. They didn't belong to the girls. And we do, again, in so many of these cases, as years go by and missing people are looked for and, it becomes a recovery mission, basically, it's insane, how many remains you do find that have nothing to do with that case. So later on in April of 1975, Swaim made an announcement. So again, just think, this is still only 4 months after the girls went missing. So Swaim makes an announcement in April saying that a 28-year-old man was arrested in connection to a string of obscene phone calls. Now, real quick, I am not going to convolute the show. We don't have the time or the brain space to tell you all of the tips, all of the possible theories, all of the possible bad guys. So I'm really trying to highlight some of the ones that could really make sense here, okay? So a 28-year-old man had been arrested in connection to a string of obscene phone calls. John Swaim states that this individual's name came up multiple times during his investigation into the girl's disappearance. Okay. A family called John Swaim after having complaints of this man calling their 15-year-old daughter and her sister with obscene messages over the past 2 years. John Swaim and his team organized a meeting where the 28-year-old thought he was meeting up with the 15-year-old girl. He was Chris Hansen before Chris Hansen was cool. Okay. So once he arrived, Swaim and his team held the man until detectives could show up to arrest him. Come to find out, he had a 5-year probation sentence for indecent exposure and multiple other sexual type crimes. The man worked for a store. Listen to this now. The man worked for a store in Fort Worth where Rachel Trlica had applied for a job not long before her disappearance. Evidently, this man was using his position to get the names and phone numbers of girls who had applied for jobs there. I worked with someone like that.
Yeah.
Just last year. He finally got fired. Gosh. Remember?
Yeah.
Evidently, this man was using his position to get the names and phone numbers, like I said, of the girls who had applied for jobs there. There were at least 6 women who had applied for jobs at that store and received these obscene phone calls on a regular basis. This man even lived in the same neighborhood as Rachel Trlica's parents and moved away not long before she got married. So it sounds like he moved away before she moved in with Tommy. So she was still living there, basically as his neighbor when he moved away. This man, the report goes on to say that he even drove a car that fit the description of a car that was seen parked near the Trlica home the day of the disappearance. But remember, he'd moved away, so why would his car be there? So sadly, though, this dude is basically a drop in the bucket when it comes to suspicious people hovering around this case. I'll tell you what, if we learn nothing about some of these cases, we learn that there are a lot of creeps out there. Yeah. On October 19th, 1979, so now we've gone forward a few years, a strange turn of events take place. Now listen to this and I want to hear your opinion on this because this is super, super weird. So private investigator John Swaim succumbed to an overdose after a binge of whiskey and Quaaludes. I mean, what a night, Okay, that's not funny. Get this. So anyway, it was determined suicide. This was not any kind of, John Swaim had a written wish upon the time of his death. He wanted all of the files on all of the cases he ever worked, to include the missing Fort Worth trio, destroyed. And they were duly burned.
That's
the only thing, it's stupid or it's ego, right? Because he didn't want anybody to pick up where he left off, maybe. The only thing that potentially could have made sense. I don't know this man personally, so I don't know, his way of looking at things. It has been said that maybe he wanted that happen because in those files was, in fact, dirt on many, many, many people around town. And he wanted this, so there was no retribution. There was no retribution to his wife.
Yeah, I got
upon his death.
Yeah.
So we don't know that that's why he did it, but there's some speculation that potentially could be why he wanted them destroyed. So it's worth noting that the letter sent to Tommy's home the day after the disappearance was sent to the FBI for handwriting analysis on 3 separate occasions. and each time the result came back as inconclusive. So something to consider. There is a possibility that Rachel did, in fact, write the letter. And so I thought about this a lot, but under forcible conditions. Okay. So, we talk about, let's say with JonBenet, that handwriting is talked about ad nauseum, right? And we've talked about some of these where, okay, it's not this person's handwriting, but could it be their handwriting if they're either writing with the opposite hand or just under duress? So it could be. There's also the possibility that Rachel wrote either the letter or addressed the envelope, and potentially the abductor wrote the other, and that could explain the slight difference in handwriting and the fact that one was written in pen and one was written in pencil. All right, so in January 2001, we're getting juicy now. The Fort Worth PD would reopen the investigation. They said, so 2001, okay? It's like 25 years have gone by, 6 or 7. They said that around 20 witnesses who saw them that night had come forward. He also said that they had sent over 100, they being the Fort Worth PD, had sent over 150 letters to coroners in 5 states concerning remains that could have been the girls. To be fair, it's worth noting that the case gained more traction and more investigative action as the years went on than early on, when it first happened. So none of them turned out to be the trio. They also said they'd narrowed the list of suspects down to 5, but would not say who. Then in 2001, 25 years after, a man named Bill Hutchins came forward. Now, Hutchins was a former Fort Worth police officer. And at the time of the disappearance, he worked as a security guard at the Seminary South Sears outlet. It's worth noting that a couple of different witnesses would come forward to say they saw a girl or the girls getting in, forced in, or sitting in either a mall security truck or a truck with lights on it. Okay. So this guy, Bill Hutchins, like I said, he had been a former Fort Worth PD guy, but at the time of the disappearance, he was a security guard at Seminary South Sears outlet. So that's not only the mall they disappeared from, but actually where the car was parked. He said that he saw the 3 girls in a truck with a security guard the night they disappeared. But remember the elderly witness that came forward and didn't come forward again? She said essentially the same thing. He also said that he had a verbal altercation with the security guard. He didn't say what it was about, but he said that he soon apologized. They all had a laugh about it before the man and the 3 females left in the truck. So Hutchins also claims that he did call the sighting in shortly after the disappearance was made known and left a message with the secretary there, but he never got a call back. Although so much time has passed, it is reported that police were able to track down potentially the security guard that Hutchins had mentioned he talked to and interviewed him. And that security guard in question was adamant he'd not been with the girls that night. I mean, cool. I mean, just him saying I wasn't there with them that night. I don't know. I mean, okay, cool. We'll mark you off the list. Police have never publicly released who the 5 suspects they were looking at in 2001 were. Okay. So we have another potential theory. James DeBartleben, it's a weird last name, it's hard to say, has also been mentioned with this disappearance. He was dubbed the mall passer for passing counterfeit bills in malls, but he's also a suspected serial killer. Police labeled him a sexual sadist, and in his possession was actually really horrible audio and photos of victims during assaults and murders. So he lived with his parents in Fort Worth at the time of the girl's disappearance, and that was only a half a mile from where Rachel Trlica lived. Also, he was known on occasion to dress like authority figures in order to abduct his victims. He died in prison in 2011. Okay, but what do I say? The bad guy's just a hovering, right? So listen to this one. And this will be our last kind of potential suspect here. Lloyd Lee Welch. If we had Drew Breezy on here, what say Drew? He'd say, well, he's got 3 names. In 2017, he was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Sheila and Catherine Lyon, 2 sisters that were 10 and 12 years old from years prior. Get this, the girls were leaving a shopping mall in Maryland in, I think it was 1975, okay? So they were leaving a shopping mall in Maryland, if that doesn't sound familiar, when they were abducted. Welch was a ride operator for a traveling carnival. He was basically like a drifter, right, over the years, and he had many charges of sexual assault against young girls. His girlfriend, on and off for about a decade in the 70s, Helen Craver, occasionally worked as mall security.
Mm-hmm.
Even though his name was Lloyd Lee Welch, he actually went by Mike. However, it can't be ignored to me. Like, this is what I was thinking when I was reading into this. His middle name is Lee. And one could draw a bridge to the letter to Tommy. Remember how Rachel was initially spelled Rachee? And I'd mentioned that, with cursive and with your signature, it's kind of muscle memory. It was written Rachee. Like, so if he's used to writing Lee,
yeah.
And that could be a far stretch, but that was kind of the first thing that I thought about. So it's been confirmed that as of January 9th, 1974, Welch was working in Austin, Texas until into 1975. So it's also confirmed that as of March 25th of 1975, he was living and working in Wheaton, Maryland, and that's where the two young Lyons sisters were abducted and murdered. So geographically, at least, it stands to reason that he could have been behind the disappearance of the three girls in Fort Worth. Now, I'm done with my note-taking portion of the show. I will tell you, and I didn't want to spend a lot of our story time talking about this. You can follow these paths if you want to. There's a few trains of thought here. Deborah, who is Rachel's oldest sister. Mm-hmm. Deborah was living with Rachel and Tommy at the time of the girl's disappearance. She had broken up with her boyfriend and moved in with her little sister, Rachel, and Rachel's husband, Tommy. Now, remember, Rachel was 17 at that time and Tommy was 22. Deborah was 19. Deborah and Tommy had actually been engaged prior to Tommy dating dating Rachel. Okay? Mm-hmm. So the two sisters both dated the same guy and potentially both had become engaged to him. Rachel married him. Now, Deborah dismisses the word engaged, saying it really wasn't like quite that serious, like informally engaged maybe, but maybe not that serious. And that her time living with them was simply because of her breaking up with her boyfriend. There are people who say, actually, no, Rachel ran in the same crowds as Deborah. There were some wild ones around there, and potentially Tommy and Deborah were having an affair. So because of this, some will go down a path saying that Tommy had motive because he wanted to get rid of Rachel and actually just be with Deborah. Look, the dude was already divorced. He marries Rachel. I will go on and, spoiler alert, 2 years after the disappearance of the girls, he moves to a neighboring city and marries another 17-year-old girl. By now, he's 24. And then they divorce after, I think, 3 or 4 months. He marries someone else. He finally married someone else, and they've been married for 40 years. But back then, it was just everyone he could grab. Okay. So I guess my point is, I don't think he would have had any trouble just leaving Rachel and getting with Deborah if that's what he wanted. I'm not sure that killing her would be the way. And if that was the way, would he wait until she's with 2 other people to do it? I do think his lifestyle at the time was kind of a mess. There's rumors about him going he was bowling the day of the disappearance, later into the evening. I think he was kind of a mess, but that doesn't mean he was a murderer. But Rachel's little brother, Rusty, who was 11 at the time, as he's gotten older, he really had a tough time with Tommy and really kind of went down the rabbit hole. But he then started going down the rabbit hole that his sister Deborah had something to do with it. And then when you talk to people who are acquainted with Rusty, it's actually quite sad, but he's become so fixated on helping to solve this that even a private investigator he worked with has said basically he's a good guy and he's got a solid heart, but sometimes even I have leads that I just don't tell him about anymore because it turns his life upside down. Yeah. So take that with a grain of salt, but just know that you will, if you look into this case, you may find stuff about Tommy or about her sister, Deborah, when really some of these other things we talked about seem to actually have a little more bearing. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that I do want you to know is per the Daily Mail article, Fran, who is Rachel's mother, has accounted that the strongest lead came from a man who said he saw the girls in a van behind the Sears store. Rachel's mother, Fran, claimed that the elderly man was from out of town and he had been waiting in his car for a friend when he saw 3 men with the girls. Now, we've heard this before. We've heard other accounts of more than one man with these girls in that parking lot. He said he looked up and saw Rachel coming toward him. She grabbed hold of his door and begged him to please help her, said Fran. The witness was going to help, but was ordered to mind his own business. And, to be fair, back then, people just kind of did.
Oh, yeah.
People did mind their own business.
Yeah.
With the assailant, with Rachel adding, "This is my wife." So basically, he's like, "Hey, old man, leave us alone.
Yeah.
This is my wife. I'm getting her home." At the same time, the two other girls exited out of a van nearby, according to the witness, but were pounced on by two more men bundled back inside the vehicle. When this elderly man was in town a few years later, he learned about the disappearance and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
He contacted the family again. Once he saw the stories on local news, he actually visited with Fran at her home, Rachel's mother. When he saw a picture of her missing daughter, Rachel, he told her, "That's the baby who asked me to help her and I couldn't do it." Which gives me chills. And I mean, without, what I just told you is pretty much all the public knows about the case at all. I don't know how much more investigators have, but on surface level, that certainly seems to be the most likely scenario. That would explain why their car was still locked. Hadn't even gotten back to the car. It happened in the parking lot as they were on their way back. And I mean, that's it. That's the Fort Worth missing trio. And again, searches have been done. So in 2018, Rachel's younger brother, Rusty, did save money, fundraised and all of that. And did have a company pull 2 or 3 cars, I believe, out of a nearby lake when he really had the thought that something had happened, that he'd have answers there, but nothing came of it. And so, any lead has been followed up on, sadly, with cases like this. But, and that's where crazy things happen because, recently there was like a link to the yogurt shop murder situation just a couple weeks ago, like with new technology. We say it all the time, even in a case this old, they can test for one thing and it's a domino effect. And so, who's to say, even while it seems hopeless, hopefully there is something that can come of this and somebody will know something.
Yeah, I'm sure they've got like those names in the file that were security, or like the employer who would have had access to her information when she, and then, I mean, you never know too. Back then you have detectives start to dig in, and as the years go on, but they can tie into databases and then realize, hey, out of Austin, maybe we had a ring of 3 guys that were kidnapping or whatever.
Oof.
Yeah.
Let me show you guys. I think the pictures I have. So here's a picture actually of Rachel and Tommy right around the time they got married. We have that. Here's an old article, 3 girls missing after shopping trip. Also, these articles to me, I don't know, when I'm researching, you read all these words, I'm trying to get the facts, but when you see the article in the newspaper, it takes you back to that time and think like people are just eating their breakfast, going to work, reading the newspaper, and they're reading about this case as it's happening in their town, maybe to neighbors of theirs or coworkers of theirs. Here's another one that says missing girls' families still seek answers, and it's got a picture of the 3 girls. Also, a little tip, guys, if you ever are finding yourself looking into something old or something that happened a long time ago, not that I'm in a place to give you tips, but I will say that like subscriptions to like newspapers.com and things like that, there have been a few times where a story, it could go either way. The newspaper could have it wrong too. That's for sure. But sometimes all of a sudden I'll read the same thing 100 times and I go back to when it actually happened and read what like the police chief said in the moment. I'm like, whoa. And it could be just a little bit different. And then you realize, well, that actually changes things because that's not how it was reported, or whatever. So that's always really interesting. But woo, how have you been? How's everybody doing?
Yeah.
Is it cold? Is it cold where you are? We say it every time.
I know. I feel like the heat is blasting.
I'm really hot right now. And it was actually cold today.
Yeah, and that heat's not turned up, but man, it's cooking up here.
Hey, Marines. Got Michael Hendricks in the house. Tyler. Faulkner, grab ass. I saw Silly earlier. Clark Culper. I think he's up in. I can't talk about cold weather right now. He literally lives, I think, where you're not even allowed to go. Yeah, there are parts like poles of the earth where I hear that you're not legally supposed to be, and I think that that's where he travels for work.
Where like your vehicle has a separate heater unit or something.
Oh, probably. I don't even know. Literally, it's just like desolation and just white ice everywhere.
Man,
I don't know. I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
but this may not be the show. Oh, we had heaven in here.
I hate saying there's things I wouldn't do, but I don't know that I could do that. That's
couldn't do it.
How have you been? You always ask me, and I don't want to detract from you.
Just fine.
Yeah,
just fine. Just living life, guys. No, I've been great. Yeah. I'm not sure. I can tell you right now, I'm not super sure what next Tuesday holds. We'll try to make it happen. There's some other things going on next week, so we'll see. We are back to our weekly shows, so just if we don't have one, don't think that's going to set off a string of many weeks without one. It would just be one off. Tyler's saying, hope y'all are still live when I'm done. If not, have a great night. Hey, what'd you cook us for dinner, Tyler? Maple syrup? Something like that? Michael Hendricks is saying it is cold as a mofo. You know, it's not, it's really, we joke about it all the time. Yeah. We are on the coast in the Southeast and we really can't complain. We get about a total of 4 to 6 weeks of uncomfortable weather. And by that, I mean, it's like 40.
Yeah. I mean, was it like 30 something this morning?
It was cold.
Oh my gosh. This morning was cold.
Holy cow. Yeah. Yeah, Hendricks. So he's saying that Columbus, Ohio dentist and wife murder story is wild. It's awful. It's awful. If you guys, I mean, if you just haven't read any headlines, maybe you haven't heard of it. Otherwise, it's been plastered everywhere. Well, I told you about it a little bit. A woman and her husband were found murdered in their home. The 2 children in the home that I think are 1 and 4 were found alive and well. They had been murdered, and then after a little bit of investigation, you come to find out that it was actually her ex-husband who had done so. And it sounds like there had been quite a mess with him earlier on. And I think they divorced in 2017? Is that right? But just horrible, horrible story. Tyler's making us chicken burgers. Is that a tater? Or is a tatter something in Canada? I never really know. So Hendricks is saying they went to high school with some of his friends. Oh, his dad was your principal. Oh, gosh.
Man.
Yeah. Also, like, look, I don't ever talk about anyone's body, but since he's the bad guy, I don't really mind. Did you guys see him walking into court? It's just an odd one. I'll say that.
What do you mean, like?
Well, okay, so he's the guy that when you saw the mugshot, you asked if he was from Minecraft because his face was like wide and blocky.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Well, he's the bad guy.
Allegedly.
Okay. So, but when he walked into court, it was one of those where you're surprised by like the neck down because all you've just seen is the face. I don't know. It's just
like thinner, you mean? Like his body was thinner or wider or blockier?
Just kind of like a potato, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Like round, but in a funny way, like a weeble wobble, maybe.
Oh my God! Hold on. Didn't we make a reference earlier? So we've talked about weeble wobbles and layaway.
Yes.
That would be good for a band's tour name. No, never mind.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is.
Weeble wobble and layaway.
Weeble wobbles, but they don't fall down. That was the commercial.
I know, it is.
Yeah. My brother had the treehouse.
Oh, yeah. Those were fun.
That was his prized possession.
We saw a 90s like cover band, a week ago? Maybe. Yeah. There are obviously a few. And we usually have some great ones around town. It was good, but guys, the crowd was disappointing.
Yeah, there was no like not a lot of energy. And we talked about this. The place charged VIP's seating,
Which is funny.
And then so everybody's sitting down on like one side of the club.
You
and
can't
it just
sit down.
Kinda,
You can't sit down. Yeah, that brings it down for everybody.
It does.
Oof. What do y'all got? Do you have any other topics you'd like to discuss? Do you have any cases you'd like us to follow up on? What about previous cases? Do you want me to reach out to Jerry Burns again?
Oh my God.
But what?
Nothing.
He might be watching.
He probably is.
Well, to be fair, and now not to make light of it, I actually thought about him a lot in this case because I thought of Michelle Martinko so much because the car in the mall parking lot.
Anytime a vehicle is like, and this sounds so dumb, people are like, "Well, of course," but you'd be surprised. Anytime a vehicle is left intact like that and locked and all that, and that's almost like more eerie or eerier than like to see a crime scene there, because then you don't.
What's I said?
You don't have anything to go off of, and
raptured. Like what happened? Like where? Like, and I said, was the crime scene out of the back door of a mall? Was it down in some ductwork? Was it? They almost got to the car. Did they get to?
And
like
if you are taking someone out of a parking lot like that, and there's pavement there, and you know what I mean, like you're not leaving behind like anything.
Well, it also shows that I think the quickness of it or the lack of a struggle in this sense, because with pavement, especially like girls, maybe not in the wintertime, but you lose shoes or a handbag, lipstick falls out of it. Like I think especially with women, there's like more stuff to kind of, fall to the wayside, or an ankle scratch that does leave a little bit of blood because they've had to drag you really quickly or something. And in this one, it feels like there was not actually just nothing there. Hendricks is saying he worked with and shared an office with for a time a lady in a David Bowie cover band. Her husband was the lead singer and would dress in wild David Bowie-like attire.
Who would ever dress up like David Bowie?
Whatever.
That doesn't even make any sense.
For the love, please. Oh.
I think that if someone dresses up like David Bowie.
How did I get rid of that?
Oh, you don't have it up there?
No, shoot. Man, if only.
Would it have been after the wedding photo? Yeah.
No, I went all the way up to the top. I have to delete. So StreamYard only holds on to whatever, like a few dozen photos at a time.
Man, that would have been like perfect.
Because he did. That's funny.
I did, and you did the makeup, and it was pretty impressive.
That's a good time.
Oh.
I do like a good cover band. In fact, Badfish is coming in a week or two. And if you haven't seen them, they're great. Hey guys, do you want to play? We could play Guess That Case. Watch. If you see something, tell me. What's that from?
Oh, I don't know.
Dun, 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 dun. Ed Gein.
Okay, well, I was going to say it looked like skin had completely been removed.
Gosh, we ought to do that one night. Hey, Jerry. Yes, Hendricks. Well, tell her to come on. It's a fun venue, and it's right down the street from the house, and y'all should come.
Yeah, we went and saw Sublime. When was
Sublime came with Slightly Stupid a couple of years ago, but we saw Badfish here just last year, I think. Y'all come party.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Hendricks is saying he just watched the Ed Gein Netflix. I couldn't do it. I didn't even try. I think I heard too many things about his voice being funky, which was not the real life situation. And like, if I didn't either know a lot about it or hadn't read so much on it, then I think I'd watch it and find interest in it. But once you do, you know what I mean? It's hard to watch like the thing that is a little fantastical, like a little.
I always think that's strange when like fictional or movies are made about real events and especially like real people. You're using his name and everything, but then they deviate from the facts.
Yeah. Well,
or make it like that. Make it like so strange that I don't know. I don't understand that. It kind of just like that. They could have had 2 customers because we would have watched it if it was.
Yeah,
decent.
and he's saying Hendrix is saying exactly what I said. I got into a conversation, I think, with Megan Brose. I think she and I were messaging back and forth about it. I think she had seen it. And I just don't, I fully agree there when he's saying his creative license was pretty extensive. That's where I'm like, you don't really get a creative license. Like, because like you said, like we have the facts. We have the guy. We've got multiple like interviews with him, footage of him. We know what it is. So like that is your license, is to be a good actor, as in play him the best you can, not play him the way you want him to be portrayed.
It would be like if someone made a movie about us, but they used actors and actresses from like the Bronx or something, or like New York, and they had these terrible New York accents, but they're supposed to, you know what I mean? And then people, if they watch it, will be like, why in the world do they have New York accents? They're from the South, and they love their accents.
Do you mean it would be like Julia Roberts in Steel Magnolias?
She was trying to make an effort. But,
my favorite movie on the planet, so no shade, Julia. But good Lord.
Yeah. How about Jodie Foster's?
I had it in my brain and let it go.
Yeah. But it's true, though. So, like that Ed Gein thing. Like if
who would play Brian Sanders in a movie tomorrow?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah,
I've been called a few things.
Gosh, I don't even know.
I was quoted by a victim one time during a shooting. Okay, house got shot up. No one got hit.
Mm-hmm.
I did my due diligence. I got a potential suspect identified. He's a Pyru, right? I do everything, get my lineup.
That was his gang.
That was my gang drop there. But no, I tracked down the victim numerous times. Like, hey, I got this lineup, because I want to clear a case, right?
Yeah.
She's like, all right, come by the house. I go by there. I'm trying to show her the lineup. So I ain't got time for all this. And I'm like, okay, but your house got shot up, whatever. So I'm trying to show her the pictures in the lineup. She's like, I ain't got time for this shit with your Jim Carrey looking ass. So, of course, I laughed. And then I was like, all right, so what you're saying is you don't want anybody criminally charged for shooting up your house and putting your family in danger. And she's like, yeah. But I put that quote in the report because I closed it out because she didn't want anything done. But I got a laugh out of it because I've never had anybody call me Jim Carrey.
Because you don't look like Jim Carrey.
Yeah, I don't think I look like Jim Carrey.
No, you don't look like Jim Carrey.
But she did. What about Jim Carrey looking ass? Anyway. Who would play you?
I have no idea.
No one could, baby.
Oh, God bless America.
It's true.
Okay. Hendrix is saying Paul Rudd would be a decent Brian.
I'll allow it.
That'd be good.
He's funny.
That'd be good.
He's a funny guy.
Yeah, in Monster, Hendrix. Duh. Come on. All right.
Yep.
It's time to get.
It is. You know why?
Why?
Because we're going to watch.
You want a Ferrero Rocher, don't you?
I do want a Ferrero Rocher. And I want to watch some Gilmore Girls.
Some Gilmore Girls?
Yeah.
All right. You guys, thank you for joining us. And I think everybody was a little subdued tonight, myself included, to be fair. I'm a little bit tired. But it's a great night. Again, as always, you can reach out to us. Email AndreaUplate@yahoo.com if you don't have Instagram or YouTube or anything like that. You can listen to us wherever you listen to your audio podcast. On Spotify, if you want to watch it but don't want to get on YouTube, you can do that on Spotify. Hit the buttons, do the things. I mean, I really don't know what it does for us, but it's supposed to be a good thing to do.
It's like peer pressure. You're supposed to say
it.
You're supposed to do what all the cool kids are doing.
You can follow Brian at Brian Sanders Disruptors on Instagram. You can go to his webpage, which is called
the Disruptors with BrianSanders.com.
And yeah, so just reach out to us, guys, with anything. Bosco, whenever you listen, we've been keeping up with you, buddy. Hope everything's going okay. Keep us posted. And you guys are great. We love you. And thank you for showing up and chatting with us. And can't wait to see you next week. If not next week, it'll definitely be the following one. But we're going to try our best to shoot for next week. Why don't you tell these beautiful people good night?
Good night, everybody.
All right. You guys, I guess until next week, we will see y'all next Tuesday. Good night, y'all.